is ready to go. All right, we are recording. Thank you everybody for joining today. Please introduce yourself in the chat box and keep that going as new people sign on. We are so excited to do this first ever joint webinar, talk about climate change, environmental education, Earth Day 2020, and all the opportunities that all of these great programs have to offer you. So we're going to do a brief introduction. If you have questions, please throw them into the chat box, and we've got some people on standby ready to help with questions. And we will get started. All right, so back to share. All right, so again, thank you everyone for joining today. Just a little bit of our objective for this afternoon is we are joining Project Learning Tree, Project WET, and Project WILD coordinators and facilitators. So we're going to have a really great group today to talk about all the resources available to you as facilitators and coordinators in connection to environmental education, climate education, and all connecting that under the umbrella of Earth Day 2020. So a little bit of our agenda, we'll do a brief history of Earth Day, all the initiatives for 2020, which is our big 50th anniversary, and then each of the project facilitators will have a few minutes to talk about all the resources that they have, opportunities for cross collaboration, and at the end we'll have a brief discussion. So a brief introduction for myself, because I'm probably the stranger danger situation here, but I'm so excited to be joining with all of my environmental education friends that I know from all the years of working in this field. But my name is Tracy Ritchie, and I am the Vice President of Programs and Partnerships here at Earth Day Network, and have been in the field of environmental education for quite some time, doing work in Florida and North Carolina, and now Washington, D.C. So as you might guess, and if you've done some quick math, the first Earth Day was in 1970, and it came at a time of great civil unrest in the United States from the anti-war movement and the civil rights movement happening in the late 60s. And the idea came from Senator Nelson from Wisconsin, and he wanted to mobilize that energy and use that electricity, especially with college students and college campuses, around the environment. So they started planning in late 1969, and they decided to do a spring break related event for the Earth, and they called it Earth Day. And he hired a collection of college organizers, and this handsome gentleman right here is Dennis Hayes. And Dennis Hayes was the primary organizer for the first Earth Day, and he's still very heavily involved with Earth Day Network as our board chair emeritus, and is very involved in our direction and strategic vision. So we take a lot of history from Dennis and a lot of guidance into our future. But the really impressive part is that the first Earth Day, before social media, before the internet, mobilized 20 million Americans across the country to take action for their environment. And we really call this the birth of the modern environmental movement in the United States. And it led to some really significant environmental movement, and especially policy and legislation. The EPA was founded later that year. So the other piece of this that's crazy to imagine is that we did not have the Environmental Protection Agency before the first Earth Day. The first Earth Day was in April, and the EPA was founded by December. And then we had other landmark legislation that was either reauthorized, reinvigorated, or started new, like the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Endangered Species Act, that really took shape to address all of the issues that people came out to the streets to demand that our country did better for the environment. So what I want to talk to you today very briefly is some of our major initiatives for Earth Day 2020 and how you can be involved. One of our biggest events will be the Great Global Cleanup. So we are working to coordinate the world's largest cleanup crew for 2020. One thing I'll point out is that we want to be very clear that not all events have to happen on Earth Day or even Earth Week or even with Earth Month. We really encourage you to expand your events across 2020. We want to make sure we keep up the momentum, the energy, and the awareness. We want the environment at the forefront of everyone's mind across 2020. So the Great Global Cleanup is one wonderful way to get your participants, your audiences, and your communities involved. And the cleanup is kind of the quintessential Earth Day event, but we want to do things a little bit different and raise the bar a little bit for all of our events across 2020 and connect the cleanup to some citizen science and civic action opportunities. So if you are working with a community group, you are welcome to register your cleanup on our website and you will appear on our map. You can either do that to encourage more participation and have people sign up through our website, or you can also just let us know that your event is happening and dictate it on our map to demonstrate all the collective impact that is happening across 2020. In conjunction with the cleanup is our new citizen science initiative called Earth Challenge 2020. So within this new phone app and website application, there will be a plastic pollution widget and an air quality widget. And so the plastic pollution widget is very closely tied to our cleanups, that while you're out on the cleanups, we want you collecting data about the types of litter that you're finding, where you're finding it, and how we can report that to ultimately address the source of this litter. So we want to make sure that the great global cleanups across 2020 aren't just these small Band-Aid cleanups where you drive by 2 weeks later and it's like you were never there. We want to really address the source of this litter so it doesn't return. So the website is really, or sorry, the phone app is very sophisticated. It will be available on Apple and Android, and it will actually be available by the end of next month. So any cleanups that happen by the end of February or even into March, the app will be available on Apple and Android. And you can have all your cleanups coordinated through the app, reporting your data, and address the sources of this litter issue. We'll also have a cleanup app where you can, or excuse me, an air quality app where you can address air quality in your community, see what you are, how you compare to some global data. Everything's going to be open and free access data. And then there'll be some widgets that, or sorry, pop-ups that come up with calls to action of how you can work on air quality and plastic pollution issues in your community. We're going back to our roots in a big way for Earth Day 2020 and using the teach-in model that was the first Earth Day model in 1970. So a teach-in is any kind of community coming together to talk about an issue that is important to them and then address that issue through collective action. So the important piece of a teach-in is that you're always have your next step, have your action plan ready to go before you leave the event so we know how to work together to address these issues. We have a slew of other programs that we just don't have time to talk about today, but we have huge initiatives for Artists for the Earth and how we connect to art through the environment, through education and communication, and making sure that we not just address our concerns, but our hope as well. So we have a gallery, a quote unquote gallery on our website where artists can feature their work, everything from climate ballets to documentary films to photography to sculpture. Any kind of art exhibit or exhibition can be posted on our website. We also have Food Prints for the Future, which is a domestic program for Earth Day Network, where we talk about the connections between food and climate and understanding our food systems and our climate systems and how they're connected. And that question that we always get of what can I do? Understanding your impacts of your food are a great way for individual action. For those of you who work at university campuses or are associated with university students, we have a program called Mobilize You, where we help to empower, develop efficacy and training for action in university and college students. University students were really the prime audience for the first Earth Day, and so we want to make sure that that community is activated again in a big way. Something that we learned within our research is that the first Earth Day was selected to be a Wednesday in 1970 because it was the highest class attendance rate for college students. And it just so happens that Earth Day 2020 falls on Wednesday again. So we're really excited to have university students engaged across Earth Day 2020. For those that work with your cities and municipalities and your local elected officials, we have a Green Cities program. So if you're connected to your mayor and you want them to work with Earth Day and make some broad and bold proclamations or declarations about what they want to do to make your city a more sustainable city, we have tons of resources for that as well. A couple more opportunities for you to engage with Earth Day and Earth Day Network. Back in 2011, the Campaign for Environmental Literacy, National Wildlife Federation, the U.S. Green Building Council, and Earth Day Network came together to spearhead an initiative backed by many of your organizations to found the Green Ribbon program through the U.S. Department of Education. So many of you are doing so much work with green schools. I know Project Learning Tree has a stellar program that would include a lot of these schools and initiatives. So if you are also interested in learning more about being a Green Ribbon school, we have information for you there, which is a great recognition program through the U.S. Department of Education. You can also sign up to be an Earth Day school if you are connected to any K-12 school in the United States. We are looking to, it's not a commitment, it's just, or it's not a legal commitment, but a formal commitment that you are going to do something for Earth Day 2020 and to be connected to the network of schools around the world, showcasing students that everyone is working on this together. For those on the policy side or interested in policy work, we are also working with governors around the country to have them proclaim April 22nd as Environmental Education Day. Earth Day Network is really adamant about making environmental education more formalized in our school systems and hoping to get governor support to acknowledge that and recognize that. And we have different resources for you to reach out to your governor about that opportunity and resources for your governor to then take action around April 22nd as Environmental Education Day. Again, we have tons of resources on our website. We just launched a brand new website at the end of December. So if you haven't seen us in a while, please connect to that. We have a resource library that was just launched yesterday, actually, just in time for the webinar, of all of our free resources. We have multiple translations for a lot of our resources. So please check out the Education Resource Library. If you at your individual organization want to sign on to be a partner, we would love that. If, as you joining us for Earth Day 2020, your logo would be featured on our website as a partner. So if you're interested in that, please let us know. You can register all your events that you're a part of for Earth Day 2020, as I know many of you already participate in those events. So please register those events on our website. And we have, again, tons of resources through our resource library. I'll hold off from there. What we're going to do, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We're actually going to hold all questions for the end because we have so much to talk about in these few minutes that we all have together. So please include your questions in the chat box, and then we'll open it up for a larger discussion at the end, and we'll share contact information too for any of the follow-up information from there. So from there, I will hand it over to Julia Beck with Project WET. And we will hear what Project WET has to offer for resources and opportunities for all these opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you, Tracy. Okay. Hopefully everybody is seeing that now. So first of all, I just want to thank Tracy for pulling us all together in the Earth Day Network, for pulling us all together and doing this joint webinar with Wet, Wild, and PLT. It's really excited to have this holistic experience for Earth Day, the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Julia Beck, and I am the Vice President of Networks here at Project WET, which basically just means that I work with all of our partners in helping them with their resources. So it's so nice to see so many of our partners here. Hello to you, hello to our facilitators, and nice to meet you to the WILD and PLT people I do not know as well. So this year for Earth Day 2020, we are all about climate change, or climate resilience, or climate literacy, or climate focus. Whatever you need to say to make this work for your program, water systems that are changing, it's all the same thing. That's what we're focusing on this year. And this, of course, is all around a new educator guide that we have coming out around World Water Day in March and Earth Day in April. It is titled Climate, Water, and Resilience. We are requiring a workshop for this guide. The reason for this being that we just feel the science is so complex, and we really feel it's important to build the capacity and comfortability to teach about climate change, for educators to teach about climate change, and for all of you to teach about climate change. So look for the digital version coming out in March and the print version coming out in April. You know, all of this basically stems from the evidence that climate change is not taught in schools right now, and 80% of parents want it to be. And in fact, most teachers want it to be too, but they don't know how to do it. And we want to change this. So some of you have seen this little video. It's only 1 minute long. I'm going to share it right now because it talks about the importance of it, but also those of you who are a WET coordinator facilitator, this is something you can do to promote workshops. You can use this video. I'm happy to send this out if you don't have it. So we'll be updating that as the new climate guide comes out, as we have more resources available, but that is available as a resource for all of you that do workshops. And I know that climate change is a controversial topic in some states, or the term climate change is. I'm aware of that. We want to help you to still be able to teach this. Just so you know, a while back, the National Science Teachers Association came out with their stance on teaching climate science, which basically says that there's overwhelming scientific consensus that says the Earth's climate is changing and that this is largely due to human-induced increases of greenhouse gases. So it is happening, the science proves it, and we should be teaching about it. And that is our stance as well. Having said that, we realize that's easier said than done for many of our partners. So we have not put the word climate change into any sort of heading, title, or anything that we are promoting. So the Climate, Water, and Resilience Guide will have an advanced training for our coordinators in early April. For those of you, this will be obviously in time for Earth Day. For those of you who attend this training, you will get a free hard copy of the new guide. Of course, everybody will get a digital copy as well, and look for more information about that. So what does this look like? There'll be background information. There'll be 9 activities to teach about climate change, including 2 that teach about the fundamentals of climate versus weather and the greenhouse effect. And then 7 more activities that talk about different impacts on oceans, soil moisture, freeze thaw, invasive species, water management, and health and disease. And then at the very end, there's also a table of additional WET activities that we suggest educators can use from our other publications. And of course, because I know people will ask, yes, it will be correlated to Common Core standards and NGSS, and also addressing, we'll note which literacy principles each activity addresses in terms of our water literacy principles and the climate literacy principles. The other resource that has been out there, but we just updated it, and it is now available to download on our website, is the Climate Resilience Lesson Plan. This is a free resource for educators who have Guide 2.0. It has the suggestions for using 4 Guide 2.0 activities, step-by-step suggestions on how to teach about climate using those activities, as well as 2 full activities from our SMAP activities, which are ones we developed with NASA JPL on soil moisture and freeze thaw. And then there's, again, that table of suggestions of additional WET activities. So I keep talking about this table. What does that look like? Well, Well, it looks like this, basically. There's a table in the back that has an activity, the publication, and a summary for use and what grade levels it's suggested for. But, you know, climate change isn't taught in a box. It shouldn't be taught in a box, and it's not just about water. So Project WET, Project WILD, and Project Learning 2, we came together and we all compiled the activities and resources that we have to teach about climate change, and we put it into one document in a table format like this. It's called Teaching About Climate Change, Plants, Water, and Wildlife, and that is now available for you on our website, and I'm sure that PLT and WILD are following suit here soon. Our website, is projectwet.org/climate. This is where we will keep all of our climate resources, including the educator information about the educator guide, the lesson plan, that table of activities, and other resources. One of which is an exciting new initiative we have for Earth Day 50. It's a partnership with Project WILD and the National Wildlife Federation. It's really getting teachers comfortable and knowledgeable about climate change. It's a free online training, and the goal is to get teachers to teach one climate change lesson every day for a week, preferably during Earth Day week. But, you know, if it can't be Earth Day week, that's fine. The whole idea is to kick it off then and integrate climate change into the curriculum. So this free training will be available for a limited time around Earth Day. We're not quite sure how long yet, but long enough. The Earth Day package looks like this. It's a virtual online training where teachers or educators or all of you will learn the basics of climate change through 2 WET activities, and then learn some impacts of climate change through 2 WILD activities. And so anybody who takes this free training gets 4 free lessons from WET and WILD. And then they will also watch some impact videos that are really pretty amazing and great tools to have for the classroom from NWF. From there, they create a lesson plan for a week of teaching climate change, and of course, receive CEUs. So this is important because you WET and WILD coordinators may end up getting questions, or facilitators may get questions about, you know, getting these CEUs, and we should have everything for them to do this, but they may come to you. So please let us know if you have questions. So, you know, last but not least, this is a 2020 focus. This is not just an Earth Day focus. That's a huge initiative that we're launching around Earth Day, and we want it to be a focus for you around then, but we really just want everybody to get a workshop on the calendar in 2020. And if you can't say climate change, say whatever you have to say to get it on there, and we will help you with that during our advanced webinar as well. The goal, again, is to build capacity and comfortability to teach about climate change. So, you know, we'll be doing this in detail in our advanced webinar, but some of you may not be able to wait that long. So I just want to point out, you know, a suggested workshop agenda. Lead with the data, data. Always have a guest speaker there to talk about the science. Lead with the fundamentals, those first 2 activities from our climate change guide. And then you can get into the local impacts, what's relevant to your community. And depending on what that is, that might be from Guide 2.0, or it might be from a different guide. And finally, resilience. And this is a really important part that Tracy also talked about. You know, what actions can students take? How can your community adapt? And this is the positive information we want people to take away. And I just wanted to quickly share Brian Brown's upcoming workshop agenda in California, because he's been doing this with the Guide 2.0. And it's pretty cool the way that he has it broken down. It's actually broken down into strands. So that might be a good option for you. Of course, he has the guest speaker here coming in to talk about the science, but then has a WET activities to back up these different strands and learn about the different parts of it, water management, ending with that resiliency, community resiliency. And then, of course, the other workshop elements as well. So that is a very brief overview of what we have. Let's make 2020 about climate, water, and resilience. Visit our website. You should be able to get everything we have right now there, and we will continue to update it. And of course, email me if you have any questions at any time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Julia. Those are some incredible resources that I know everyone is furiously writing down. One piece that we forgot to do at the beginning is some more introductions. So thank you everybody for introducing themselves in the chat, but we also have a poll to kind of gauge who all is here. and what your focus is. So really quickly, if you can start with this poll of, are you a PLT coordinator, a WET coordinator, a WILD coordinator, a facilitator? If you identify as an educator or a classroom teacher, where do you fit in? How do you identify? And knowing that there's probably many of you that are several of these opportunities. And then wondering, how is everybody, what are the resources that you're trained in? Again, I'm guessing it's multiple that everyone has been familiar with over years and years. And do you usually do something for Earth Day? Is this something that you are working with in your environmental education communities? Is this something that is new for your group, and how much resources and support you'll need? And how everyone typically acknowledges Earth Day every year. So these are some really interesting results. Thanks everybody for filling that out. So next we will go to Rachel Lang with Project Learning Tree and hear more about Project Learning Tree's resources, how everything's connected, and how we can support you in some upcoming climate education. Oh, I'm sorry, can you not see the results? Can people see the results?
I think you have to share your screen for a sec.
Oh, okay. Let me do that then. Thank you for the tip. So sharing my screen.
I thought there was a share button to share the results of the
Or maybe if I
poll, is
end
there not?
polling. If I end, sorry everybody,
Yeah,
I'm new to this. Share results. Here we go.
there we go. Yep.
All right. So a lot of interesting work, a lot of equal across the projects, and more, almost half of you do something for Earth Day every year. So thank you for that. Hopefully we can get more people on board. Wonderful. All righty. Well, I will stop sharing my screen, and Rachel, I will let you take it away.
Hi everyone, I hope you can hear me. My name is Rachel Lang. I work for Project Learning Tree. I'm the program coordinator here. I'm also joined today by Anna Lerner, the manager of professional development and instructional design. I just want to thank Tracy for inviting us to participate in this webinar. We're really excited to be collaborating for Earth Day. And we're also excited to share with all of you some of the resources we have to support your Earth Day initiatives. So as Julia had mentioned earlier, we have worked with Project Wet and Wild to develop the Teaching About Climate Change resource list. We have identified a number of PLT activities, over 40 activities that teach about climate change or encourage climate action. And this includes some of our free resources like Teaching with iTree and Southeastern Forest and Climate Change. And those can be accessed on our website by creating an account on plt.org. You can also use these resources when putting together Earth Day themed workshops and share them with the educators in your network so they can be supported in their efforts to teach about climate change. We will be making these available on our website soon. They'll be available on plt.org/earthday, so please bookmark that page when you get a chance. And for our coordinators, it'll be available on Coordinator's Corner for them to share as well. Another resource that you could share with educators in your network are the curated web resources and tools specific for teaching about climate change and Earth Day. Available right now on plt.org/educator-tips/Earth Day activities. You can find a list of activities that you could do today and get started with your Earth Day initiatives. We'll also be curating our April branch focused around some Earth Day topics, and our EE resources focused on climate action and education. So make sure that you're subscribed and that you share it with the educators in your network to subscribe as well. So we want to encourage you to connect PLT resources with the various Earth Day campaigns, as Tracy explained earlier. Some of the opportunities might be with the Global Teach-In, the Global Cleanup, and Mobilize You. which is their higher ed initiative. To participate in the global teach-ins, one example is to host or participate in one of the many teach-ins. You may consider sharing these resources with facilitators and educators in your network to host a teach-in themselves that use PLT activities, or you yourself might host a teach-in in person or online, such as using Facebook Live or on a webinar like this. Again, you can use PLT activities and free resources to teach about climate change and encourage action during your teach-in. So definitely get your hands on that table that we've created to find which activities work best. For example, you might consider starting with some activities from PLT Southeastern Forest and Climate Change, such as the Stepping Through Climate Science, or from our Carbon and Climate E-Unit. And then you might pair it with an activity from our Green Jobs unit, like Seeking Sustainability, to offer a global perspective. And then to finish, for a call to action, use one of our activities such as In the Driver's Seat or There Ought to Be a Law to create some action around those climate issues. You can also consider creating a call to action by hosting an educator workshop tailored to climate change and education, and encourage participants to host a teach-in in their community using that information. If this sounds like something for you, feel free to reach out to us at National to help access resources and to develop tailored agendas. Another exciting initiative, as we heard, is the Global Cleanup. This is a great opportunity for us to participate and encourage our green schools to sign up for a cleanup near them. You may consider pairing a green schools investigation, like our waste and recycling investigation, with a cleanup, or use the app that Tracy mentioned, the Earth Challenge app, to do an air quality investigation and provide some real data for the citizen science work that they're doing. This is a great opportunity to re-energize some of the green schools in your state and showcase their really great work. Another opportunity to connect with the Earth Day campaigns is through Mobilize You. Consider engaging with some of your pre-service network and faculty who are passionate about sustainability. You may consider hosting a one-day workshop or webinar for those pre-service students that focuses on climate change and education. You can invite both the student participants and the university faculty to join the online network for Mobilize You, and then they could share more about how they use PLT to provide tools to the next generation of educators. In addition to many of the resources we've already shared, we encourage you to also help spread the word and facilitate lessons from our new Green Jobs unit in coordination with your Earth Day initiative. The activities Who Works in This Forest and Seeking Sustainability provide opportunities for youth and adults alike to think about their future and their role in actions that directly support and benefit the Earth through green jobs. We really want people to walk away feeling like they have the tools and feel empowered that they can make a positive impact in the future, and Green Jobs is one way to do that. Teaching about and opening doors to green career pathways encourages young people to join us for a more sustainable future, whether those careers are in forestry or in the green sector at large, such as environmental educators like all of us here, and policy advisors or sustainability managers. I also wanted to mention that we're also working right now on aligning the green jobs with NGSS standards. So that's going to be coming soon on our website, and we hope to help, have your help in sharing that with educators. And then last but not least, please help us spread the word by sharing on social media. You can like or repost our social media posts or create your own. And also follow all of these great partners such as the Earth Day Network so we can learn more about what's happening on a day-to-day. And especially use these hashtags that you see here so we can track each other and support each other in these initiatives. And that's all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel, so much for all those great resources. I have to say, I was on the writing and development team for the Southeastern Forest and Climate Change module back in my dissertation work, so I'm so glad to see it out there. And I know so many of the Project Learning Tree facilitators and coordinators on this call were involved in the testing and pilot testing and evaluation of that module, which is super to see. And the green jobs are just so important when you're working with your students. So that is a great resource to keep in mind as we appeal to teachers and school administrators of the importance of our work and why it needs to be included into the classrooms. Wonderful. So next we have Kelly Reynolds with Project Wild, and she will tell us about their resources and all the great work that they are doing.
All right, can you all see my screen and hear me?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, all right, so I am Kelly Reynolds. I am a Project Wild program manager at the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. Here I am dressed as a bear. And so thanks Tracy for pulling us all together, and like Julia and Rachel have done before me, I just wanted to share a little bit from Project Wild to talk about how y'all can celebrate Earth Day 2020 with Project Wild. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Project Wild activities, wild workshops, and working with your facilitators or as a facilitator to celebrate Earth Day, and including some of the initiatives that Tracy has mentioned. So I just want to give you guys a few seconds to think about at what type of events will you be using wild activities in 2020. So that might be in a classroom with students or at a program. If you're a facilitator, it might be with workshops that you're leading, or if you are a coordinator, maybe it's for a facilitator training. But just think about all of the instances where you'll be picking Project Wild activities to use. And I want us to focus on how you can pick some of those activities to tie in with some of these Earth Day themes. So some of the things that Tracy talked about, climate change education, plastic pollution, citizen science, artists for the earth, some of the action components in terms of conserving habitat and making sure that animals of all types have a place to thrive alongside us. These are some things I'm gonna talk about. If you can picture a Venn diagram of Project Wild and Earth Day Network and Earth Day initiatives, there's a lot in the overlap section, so I'm gonna touch on some of that. This picture on the right here is from our activity, A Whale of a Tale, which we, in the latest printing, we took out the life-size pattern of a whale, and we still have it if anybody desperately wants that, but that involved using a lot of plastic to make a life-size whale. And so what we did instead is Mark took that out, and he included an extension about making a sculpture of a whale using recycled plastic. And so here's a picture that we got from washtashore.org. They have a bunch of amazing sculptures. So that's one example of an activity and extension you could use to talk about plastic pollution. But focusing first on climate change, I want to call to your attention a couple of things that we have pulled together. So in 2012, AFWA, along with NOAA and the Fish and Wildlife Service and a couple of other organizations, put together this National Fish, Wildlife, and Plants Climate Adaptation Strategy. So Elena and I, our Project Wild director, we sat down with Maggie Johnson, who's our Climate Adaptation Program Manager, and talked about what agencies are doing to manage wildlife in a changing climate and Project Wild and how we could connect those. So this adaptation strategy includes 7 goals. And so what we did is we tied a Project Wild activity to each of those goals. So I'll give you a couple of examples. The first goal is conserve habitat to support healthy fish, wildlife, and plant populations and ecosystem functions in a changing climate. So conserve habitat, that's kind of a no-brainer. And we connected that one to Habitat Heroes. So students design a project to improve habitat in their community. Another example is Goal 6, increase awareness and motivate action to safeguard fish, wildlife, and plants in a changing climate. So our aquatic wild activity conservation messaging, where students plan and produce a public service announcement, is a good connection for that one. So on our website, we have all of these 7 goals listed out, and we have an activity for each of them that you could do to connect to those goals. So that could be used in a classroom as a unit, that could be used to fill out a workshop agenda focused on climate adaptation, and that's available online. As Julia and Rachel already mentioned, we are excited about this document that lists all of our activities that connect to climate change. So that's available on our website. And in the summary for use column, there's the activity description, which can help jog your memory for some of those activities that you might not use as often. And there are also notes about highlighting specific procedures or extensions that really focus in on climate change. So for example, with Forest in a Jar, that activity is about ecological succession, but there's a STEM component that you can look at to talk about precipitation trends and how changing precipitation levels might impact succession. And the color coding relates to how closely that activity ties in with climate change concepts. So then pulling those activities into packages that you might use in a workshop, you could do a climate and wildlife theme, or just an Earth Day. Like Julia was saying, sometimes you might not want to just advertise it that it's about climate change, but you could focus on Earth Day as a whole. This picture is from Florida, Anita training some of her facilitators in the the updated procedures for the activity called Habitat Circles, which definitely relates to climate change and interdependence. And I just want to say, all of this is not new for us. This is stuff that you guys are already doing day in and day out, and I'm just kind of highlighting some examples of things that you're doing that connect with these initiatives. So here's an example from Susan Robinson in Connecticut, our coordinator. She had put together an agenda for wild and climate change resilience. So you can see how she broke it down into 3 categories: understanding climate change and how it works, looking at impacts, how it affects people and wildlife, action with adaptation and mitigation, and then weaving wild activities into that framework. And here's another example from Pam Landry in Massachusetts and a couple of her facilitators. They did a wild and climate change workshop, and they talked about climate science, how to teach and not overwhelm, age appropriateness, what can you and your students do. Really important things to talk about when discussing climate change education, of course. And then in the afternoon, they did some wild activities to support that. And then moving on to facilitators. So thinking about celebrating Earth Day 2020 by doing activities and maybe having a special topic workshop, there's also avenues that you communicate with facilitators, or if you are a facilitator, you can think about this in your own setting of how you can talk about some of these things like plastic pollution or climate change or citizen science. And I know a lot of you coordinators, you're communicating with your facilitators in lots of different ways, whether it's a newsletter or a webinar or a retreat or a Facebook group or a listserv. And so there's all of these different avenues where you could provide some continuing education on some of these topics. Julia mentioned, bringing in experts. That's that's something that people appreciate a lot, just hearing it kind of not straight from the horse's mouth, but you know what I mean. And for example, we had Ann Rodman, the Physical Resources and Climate Science branch chief at Yellowstone Center for Resources, come out and talk to our coordinators at our conference this year, and she did a great job of talking about the science and then also what they're seeing in the park. And so sometimes bringing somebody out like that to talk with your facilitators is a great thing that they appreciate. So here's an example of a setting where you could do something like that. Rachel Woodworth in Indiana had a facilitator treat this past weekend, and she shared the agenda and some photos with me. And although they didn't talk about climate change at this specific retreat, it was a great opportunity to talk about other things that the agency is dealing with and share those with facilitators. They talked about chronic wasting disease. They talked about recruitment, retention, reactivation of hunters and anglers. She had a mammologist come in and talk about wildlife science. So that's another thing where you could talk about these Earth Day initiatives with your facilitators. On our website, we do have a climate and wildlife page where a lot of these things that I'm sharing with you are posted, so you can check that out. If you go over to that Off What Inspires tab on the right, there'll be a drop-down menu, and you can click Project Wild and Climate and Wildlife, and it'll bring you to this page. And then just touching on a few of the other things Tracy mentioned, aside from climate change education, with plastic pollution and the global cleanup and the Earth Challenge, we do have activities that talk about plastic pollution, from Growing Up Wild, Aquatic Wild, and Project Wild. I've listed some of them here on the left. And citizen science, of course, is a huge thing. We have lots of activities that deal with data collection that can be done alongside a citizen science program or app. Those are listed on our website, and some of them mention specific citizen science programs like iNaturalist or Monarch Watch or things like that, but you could also use a lot of these activities to collect data and use them alongside Earth Challenge as well. Here's an example from Maryland. Carrie Wickstead, our coordinator there, had Lindsay Jacks from Lights Out Baltimore come out to talk about light pollution and wildlife. We have a new activity in the guide called Lights Out, and that activity mentions a citizen science program called Globe at Night. So you can check that out on our website as well. So lots of citizen science connections. And then Art for the Earth was one Tracy briefly touched on. We had a request recently for a list of wild activities dealing with art and music, and so Mark put that together. That's up on our website as well. Rachel sent these photos from the activity looking at leaves. Lots of great opportunities for creative expression connected to nature. And lastly, conservation and biodiversity. That's a piece talking about stewardship and whether it's cleanup or taking care of habitat. There are lots of wild connections. And again, just sharing what's already out there and helping connect the dots. In Maryland, Carrie recently shared a Simple School Wildlife Garden guide. Jen has a 2020 projects and activities for wild school sites in Ohio, and Sheila in Arkansas has a wild school sites program there where they offer grants. So lots of great resources, and one of the things that we get to see at the national level, which I'm sure the PLT and WET folks can attest to as well, is seeing the things that you all share with each other pop up across the country. So, you know, Jen might send an email in Ohio and Carissa answers with something from Pennsylvania, and then Kurt uses it in Montana. And we get to see that happen. And so this is just an opportunity to share some of those resources. If you have anything connected to this, whether it's climate change education or citizen science, send it my way. I can make it available. And then I think my last slide is I was thinking about the symbolism of we're all in the boat together rowing, and we're always doing environmental education, but it's really exciting to have Wet Wild Learning Tree with all of our oars. And this is from Row New York, and I like their slogan of pulling together to push ahead. So go team. And that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. That was a great presentation. I love the arts connection. I know we didn't get much time to talk about that, but we can feature student art on the Artists for the Earth gallery. So if you're working with young learners, especially the early childhood material, we'd love to see that information. One thing I didn't really focus on is that Earth Day Network has an Educator News Bites network. It's our newsletter, and I know that's a bad word right now, so we don't want a newsletter that is just something else crowding your inbox, but we really like to feature stories, innovative programs, innovative educators that are taking climate and environmental education and STEM education to new levels, making sure that we are always value added with our educators and not asking them to do something outside of their ordinary day or make things harder for them. So if you have any stories that you would love to feature about an educator that you work with that does really great things, or one of your programs, we'd love to feature you in our educator newsletter. So send me an email, and I'm going to put out our contact information in just a second. So that's another opportunity and resource to crowdsource information, but then also share your stories, share your highlights, and that is to a great, wonderful global audience of educators. So at that, we have about 10 minutes left, which is great timing. So we wanted to open the chat box open for questions. So if you have a question from any of the presentations or for any of the presenters, please go ahead and start typing in the chat box, and we will try to address as many as we can in our time remaining. And while we do that, I'll also share my screen for all of the contact information for each of the presenters from today. And if all the panelists want to unmute to address any of the questions we have coming up, that would be great. Okay, so here's the contact information for all the presenters today, along with all of our websites. So I encourage you, I know a lot was shared very quickly, so please explore our websites and those resources that were mentioned today. And please reach out. I know, I'm guessing I speak for everyone here, that we're happy to answer your questions. So please let us know how we can help you and support you in all the great work that you do. Yes, this webinar has been recorded, and we will make available for you to share out, likely through email and through posting on our websites. Any other questions we can help answer through any of our resources or timing of anything? Again, we really want to encourage you that this is not just an April 22nd or an April initiative. We really want people to use these resources when it makes sense for you and for your educators. So please extend this across 2020. Let us know what you're doing with your events on our website and demonstrate all that collective impact. We know that you already do so much every day, and we really want to amplify and magnify that, and are so grateful for what you all do every day.
Wow, we must have been really thorough.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. It's really exciting to have us all together.
Yeah, oh, that's great about the Tennessee EE Association. Climate Action 2020. We're going to tackle it all. Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, reach out, Michelle. That's great. Thank you all so much. It was so fun to see everybody on here. Yes, Joni, this will be available. I look for an email. I'll send it out.
Yes, and for the question about Artists for the Earth, we also have on our resource page on Earth Day Network, we have menus that we call them. So all the different programs, how you have different ideas for species, for plastics, for Artists for the Earth. We've got a whole range of ideas and conversation starters of how you can use all these programs. So please check out our resource library, but I'm happy to talk to anyone more in depth about Artists for the Earth as well. Thank you for sharing all this information.
That's a great idea. I don't know who that number person is, but to have once a year webinar to share all our resources, I love it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, hopefully this is an annual event now.
PLC is in for that.
Great. Hopefully I can come back too.
Yeah, it could be an Earth Day thing, you know?
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Well, again, thank you to all the coordinators and facilitators who joined today. We had, I think the top number I saw was 124 people logged into this webinar. So that is fantastic. And I know so many more will be watching it on the recording. So thank you all for your time. I know your time is precious, especially in the middle of the day. So thank you so much for joining in today. And please, if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.
There was a question about the websites being available as a post, and I am going to make my presentation as a PDF to send out. I don't know if Rachel and Kelly are going to, but there's links and stuff in there that people might want. So yes, that will be available.
Great.
Yeah,
great question.
Definitely.
Yeah, all our resources will be available on plt.org/Earth Day. Coming soon.
Great. And for the other panelists, I'll get you the recording the minute that I have it ready to share.
Awesome. Thanks again, Tracy.
Yeah, and with the
pulling it all
panelists
together.
coming back on video, and we'll do a picture together. I'll stop sharing my screen because I think we need to acknowledge this great, wonderful event.
How do I look?
Rachel, do you have a camera by any chance?
Yes, I do.
All right, we're still on for a few more minutes, so if anybody has questions, feel free to jump in. There's Rachel. I'm gonna minimize the chat.
There's got to be a word from this. It's like a selfie, but it's like a Zoom, like a selfie.
I love that. All right, everybody smile. Amazing. History was made.
Should we do like a fun one too? Because we're fun.
Yeah.
We ready? Silly
Ready?
one.
Oh yeah, hang on.
Props.
Amazing.
Great. I hope everyone is enjoying this. Logged on.
I don't even know what I just promoted on this.
Thank you, everybody. Look at that.
That's right, Rob. Brain trust.
I'd like to give everybody a gold star for time management. I mean, when was the last time you had more than 5 minutes at the end of a webinar?
That was super impressive, everybody. Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anna, for
Yeah,
helping.
thanks, Anna.
All right, anything else?
You're here the whole time. I didn't know.
Oh, she's hiding.
And thanks, Mark. Mark was also helping keep an eye on the chat. So it's always good, especially when you have so many people on a call.
Yes, yeah.
All hands on deck.
Yeah.
That was great. I had my coordinators looking at that as well. So I think we're good. A few people still logged on, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in, send any emails. Well done, team. That was great. Thank you so much for pulling all that together. I know it was something else on your plate, so I really appreciate everybody coming together on that. This was kind of a dream come true.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Yes.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, well.
All right, we're good. I'm going to stop the recording at this point. I think we're good on questions. Again, I'll get the recording the minute I have it. And just thank you all so much, team. This was really great.
Thank you for putting this together. Fantastic.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
thanks.
Bye.
Okay,
All
bye.
right. Bye.